The Tiger I tank, officially known during the war as the Panzerkampfwagen 6 Tiger, was one of the most feared and iconic weapons of World War II. Its story is a mix of engineering brilliance, battlefield dominance, mechanical frustration, and lasting legacy. To understand how the Tiger I came to exist, we need to go back to the summer of 1941 during Operation Barbarossa. As German troops pushed deep into Soviet territory, they suddenly came up against two Soviet tanks that completely changed the game, the T-34 and the KV-1. These Soviet machines had sloped armor, powerful guns, and wide tracks for moving through deep mud and snow. German anti-tank weapons couldn't stop them, and the tanks Germany was using at the time, mostly Panzer IIIs and Panzer IVs, were no longer enough. This created a crisis within the German military. They needed a new tank, one that could survive direct hits, destroy enemies from a distance, and restore German dominance on the battlefield. Development began almost immediately. Two major firms submitted designs, Porsche and Henschel. Porsche's version was complicated and unreliable. Henschel's version was more traditional but easier to build and more dependable. After tests in 1942, Hitler chose the Henschel version. The Tiger I had arrived. It weighed over 57 tons, had thick armor on all sides, and carried one of the most powerful guns of the war, the 88 millimeter cannon, originally based on an anti-aircraft weapon. That gun could destroy most Allied tanks from 2,000 meters away. Nothing else in the war had that kind of range and killing power. But the Tiger I wasn't just a gun platform. Its armor was thick enough that most enemy shells bounced off the front. Its wide tracks gave it good off-road performance, and its crew had excellent optics for targeting enemies. The tank was crewed by 5 men, a commander, gunner, loader, driver, and radio operator. Each had a specific job. The commander had all-around vision from a cupola on top. The gunner used precision optics made by Zeiss, allowing the Tiger I to hit targets that other tanks could barely see. The Tiger I was first used in combat near Leningrad in late 1942. It had mechanical problems at first. Many broke down before seeing action, but when they did fight, they made an impact. Soviet troops were shocked. The Tiger I could survive hits from anti-tank guns and destroy enemy tanks from beyond their range. It quickly earned a reputation as an unstoppable monster. By 1943, the Tiger I was being used on multiple fronts. One of its most important roles was during the Battle of Kursk, the largest tank battle in history. Tiger I units were used in spearhead formations, breaking through Soviet lines with heavy support from other vehicles. In these battles, the Tiger I often destroyed dozens of tanks in a single day. At Paneri, for example, a small group of Tiger Is held off repeated Soviet assaults, inflicting massive losses. German commanders began using the Tiger I in special units called heavy tank battalions, or Schwerer Panzerabteilungen. These units were elite and highly trained. They were sent to critical areas of the front to support infantry, stop enemy breakthroughs, or lead assaults. These battalions used tactics that took full advantage of the Tiger I's strengths. They chose defensive positions with long fields of fire. They waited for enemy tanks to come into range. And then they fired once and destroyed them. The phrase one shot, one kill was not just a saying, it was how the Tiger I operated. But the Tiger I didn't just dominate on the Eastern Front. It also saw action in North Africa, Italy, and France. In North Africa, the heat and sand caused mechanical issues. But the tank's armor and guns still outmatched anything the British and Americans had at the time. In Italy, the mountainous terrain made movement difficult, but Tigers were placed in key defensive positions where they could hold off entire enemy battalions. In Normandy, the Tiger I became a nightmare for Allied tank crews. The narrow hedgerows and small roads of the French countryside limited visibility and movement. But Tigers were used in ambush roles. One of the most famous Tiger I commanders was Michael Wittmann. In June of 1944, near the town of Villers-Bocage, Wittmann drove his Tiger I into a British column and destroyed multiple tanks, armored vehicles, and trucks in just 15 minutes. The attack caused panic and confusion, and Wittmann became a national hero. That moment added to the Tiger I's growing legend, a tank that could single-handedly stop an entire enemy advance. But as powerful as the Tiger I was, it wasn't perfect. It was expensive to build, costing nearly 3 times as much as a Panzer IV. It was slow and hard to transport. Its mechanical systems were complex and often broke down. The final drive and gearbox were weak points. And if a Tiger 1 got stuck or damaged, it was hard to recover. It was too heavy for most recovery vehicles. Sometimes crews had no choice but to blow up their own tanks to prevent capture. Transporting a Tiger 1 by rail was also complicated. Its tracks were too wide to fit on standard German trains, so crews had to remove the outer road wheels and install narrow transport tracks every time the tank was moved. That process took hours. Still, despite all of that, the Tiger 1 remained deadly. When it was working and when it had support, it could dominate a battlefield. Allied commanders quickly learned that if there was a Tiger in the area, everything had to change. Infantry were told to spread out, artillery was called in, airstrikes were requested. Shermans and Churchills tried to flank or avoid them altogether. One on one, most Allied tanks couldn't compete. That fear had real effects on the battlefield. Even when no Tiger 1 was present, Allied troops sometimes thought they had encountered one. Reports would come in about Tiger sightings, and entire attacks would be paused. The Tiger 1 had become more than a tank, it had become a psychological weapon. By the summer of 1944, the Tiger 1 had established itself as a battlefield terror, but its limitations were also becoming more apparent. Germany's industrial capacity was declining, fuel shortages were beginning to cripple frontline operations. Still, when a Tiger 1 rolled into battle, everything stopped. Allied tank crews continued to treat Tiger 1 sightings as high level threats. In the Bocage country of Normandy, where narrow hedgerows and winding roads limited maneuvering, Tiger 1s were used in defensive ambush positions. Their gun could knock out Shermans before they ever got close. Their frontal armor could absorb direct hits from most Allied weapons. These advantages made them perfect for stalling offensives. In one case, near Le Mesnil-Patry, just a few Tiger 1s from a German heavy tank battalion held up a full Canadian armored advance, destroying multiple tanks in under an hour. The Shermans were forced to retreat until air support could be called in. In another battle near Caen, Tiger 1s were dug into hull-down positions behind rubble and hedges, turning villages into fortresses. Infantry had to clear each building one by one, while anti-tank guns and artillery fired non-stop at suspected Tiger positions. And even then, if the Tigers had an escape route, they'd move, reset, and strike again. In Ukraine, units like Schwerer Panzer Abteilung 503 used Tiger 1s with devastating effect. One after-action report describes a single day in which 3 Tiger 1s destroyed over 30 Soviet tanks while taking no losses. These were not isolated cases. Many Tiger crews reported kill ratios of 10 to 1, sometimes higher, especially when fighting from a distance. Soviet T-34s simply couldn't penetrate the armor from the front. It wasn't until the Soviets brought in heavy artillery, flank attacks, or sheer numbers that the tide could be turned. What made the Tiger 1 so effective was not just its armor and gun, but how it was used. Tiger commanders were trained to choose their ground. They sought elevation, wide open fields of fire, and layered defensive zones. They didn't chase the enemy. They made the enemy come to them. And when the enemy came, they were met with one of the most accurate and deadly tank guns of the war. The 88 mm cannon could destroy anything on the battlefield, and the Tiger 1's optics allowed crews to identify and engage targets long before most tanks could even see them. But while the Tiger 1 was nearly unbeatable in prepared defensive positions, it struggled during retreats and rapid advances. Its drivetrain and gearbox were fragile under stress. Many were lost not in battle, but during movement. Final drive failures, broken torsion bars, overheating engines. If a Tiger 1 broke down, recovering it was difficult. In many cases, the crew had to destroy the vehicle with demolition charges. Every Tiger 1 lost was a serious blow. Only a few were produced each month, and many never made it to the front due to transport delays or lack of fuel. Still, the ones that did arrive made an impact. Crews often formed strong bonds with their vehicles. Maintenance was constant, and every crewman had a role in keeping the tank combat ready. Drivers monitored the temperature gauge constantly. Gunners practiced ranging targets even when idle. Commanders reviewed maps and terrain to pick ambush spots. A well-trained Tiger 1 crew could operate like a precision weapon, and some of those crews became legends. We've already talked about Michael Whitman, but there were many others. Crews who fought with discipline, coordination, and skill. They operated in platoons of 3 to 4 Tiger 1s, sometimes supported by Panzer IVs or infantry. The strategy was simple. Place the Tiger 1s where they could control the battlefield, use infantry to protect the flanks, and never engage unless the conditions were right. Even when the Allies brought in upgraded tanks like the Sherman Firefly or tank destroyers like the M10 Wolverine, Tiger 1 still posed a threat. They forced the enemy to adapt, to avoid direct confrontation, and instead rely on numbers, maneuver, and air power. One common Allied tactic was the flanking maneuver. Shermans would charge at high speed, baiting the Tiger 1 into firing. Once it fired, other tanks would try to circle behind and hit the weaker rear armor. But this required perfect timing and coordination. If the Tiger One's gun reloaded in time, it could still take out multiple tanks before being overwhelmed. In Italy, the narrow roads and mountainous terrain made things even more challenging. Tiger Ones were often used in blocking positions along passes and ridges. In one ambush near the Leary Valley, two Tiger Ones destroyed a column of advancing British tanks and then vanished into the hills before a counterattack could be organized. In Hungary, Tiger Ones helped stop repeated Soviet armored thrusts near Lake Balaton. Even as late as 1945, they were used in elite reserve units, reinforcing critical sectors and slowing enemy breakthroughs. The mere presence of a Tiger 1 in a region forced commanders to pause, reroute, or commit additional resources. Its battlefield presence was amplified by reputation, and that reputation wasn't just Allied fear, it was German pride. Propaganda films showed Tiger 1s rolling down roads, crushing wreckage, and being cheered by infantry. Posters and newsreels highlighted their victories. Soldiers on both sides knew the name Tiger 1. Say it on the radio and reinforcements were sent. Say it in a briefing and strategies were changed. It wasn't just a tank, it was a battlefield legend, but that legend came at a cost. Every Tiger 1 built consumed massive resources. It required raw steel, specialized machine tools, and highly trained workers. Some engineers believe those same resources could have been used to build 3 or 4 standard tanks instead. Germany's over engineering, while producing one of the best tanks of the war, also stretched its industry thin. By the time Tiger 1 production ended in 1944, only around 1,300 had been made. Most never saw action. Others were lost to mechanical issues or captured during retreats. Still, the Tiger 1 had done something no other tank had done. It had changed the way wars were fought. It had turned the concept of armor and firepower into psychological dominance, and that legacy wouldn't end with the war. In the final months of World War II, the Tiger 1 tank was still fighting Mao's, but the war had changed around it. Germany's forces were collapsing, supply lines were broken, fuel was scarce, and the mighty Tiger 1 was no longer part of a confident offensive, but a desperate defense. Tiger 1 battalions were called back again and again to reinforce failing fronts. They weren't part of sweeping movements anymore. They were the last line of defense. In Hungary, in the Ardennes, in the outskirts of Berlin, Tiger Ones were dug in, buried up to the turret to act as makeshift bunkers, or positioned in cities where long, straight streets gave them one last advantage: the first shot. In these final battles, Tiger 1 crews knew the odds were against them. They were low on ammo, running out of fuel, and facing entire enemy divisions, but they still fought. Some Tiger 1s knocked out multiple enemy tanks in their last stand before being surrounded or abandoned. In the ruins of Berlin, Tiger 1s fired down bombed out boulevards, hitting Soviet tanks with deadly precision until they were finally overwhelmed. And even in defeat, the Tiger 1 maintained its reputation. Allied troops who captured these tanks often approached them with caution. Soviet commanders sent captured Tiger 1s back to testing ranges for analysis. American and British technical teams stripped them apart to study how they worked and how to stop them in future wars. They learned what German crews already knew, that the Tiger 1 was a masterpiece of battlefield engineering and also an example of what happens when performance is valued more than production. After the war, the Tiger 1 became one of the most studied tanks in history. The 88 cannon was examined and compared to Western designs. Its armor layout and effectiveness were tested and confirmed. Its optics, especially the Zeiss targeting scopes, were considered the finest of the war. But post-war analysis also confirmed its flaws. It was overcomplicated. The final drive often failed. Repairs were difficult. It couldn't be mass produced at the scale Germany needed. And yet, its presence on the battlefield had forced every Allied tank commander to rethink their approach. Even in death, it changed how tanks were built. It didn't lead to copies. No nation tried to make their own Tiger 1, but it led to better firepower, improved optics, and new tank tactics. It changed the doctrine. The United States, the United Kingdom, and the Soviet Union all incorporated lessons learned from fighting the Tiger I, but its legacy went beyond the military. The Tiger I became a cultural icon. It showed up in movies like Kelly's Heroes, Saving Private Ryan, and Fury. It's in books, games, documentaries, and museum halls. It's the tank that even non historians recognize. It's become a symbol of power, fear, and battlefield dominance. Museums around the world sought out Tiger I's for restoration and display. The most famous of them all is Tiger 131, a fully restored running Tiger I located at the Bovington Tank Museum in the United Kingdom. Captured in Tunisia in 1943, Tiger 131 was abandoned by its crew after a lucky shot jammed the turret ring. British forces repaired it, shipped it home, and kept it. Decades later, the museum rebuilt it, bolt by bolt, part by part, and today it runs. People travel from all over the world to hear the sound of its engine, to feel the ground shake beneath its tracks, and to see the last of its kind moving under its own power. Other static Tiger Ones can be found in France, Russia, the United States, and Germany, each carefully preserved, often behind glass or under heavy security. They're rare, they're irreplaceable, they're relics of a time when tanks didn't just fight battles, they shaped them. The Tiger One also lives on in video games and models. From World of Tanks to War Thunder, from tabletop games to Lego kits, the Tiger One is often the most powerful tank in the game, or the one everyone wants to unlock. It's the trophy tank, the prestige build, the symbol of raw firepower, and in many ways, that's exactly what it was in real life. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't always reliable, but when it showed up on the battlefield, everything changed. The Tiger One was not about balance, it was about dominance. It wasn't designed for war of attrition. It was built to win individual fights, to destroy before being destroyed, to terrify before being outnumbered. And for a time, it did all of that. Over 1,000 were built. Most never survived the war. But the Tiger One's real legacy was never measured in numbers. It was measured in impact, in the fear it created, in the tactics it changed, in the legends it inspired. Today, when we talk about tanks, and when we talk about battlefield power and fear and presence, we still come back to the Tiger One. It changed the course of World War II, not because of how many were built, but because of what each one could do. One Tiger One could stop an entire offensive. One Tiger One could hold a village. One Tiger One could rewrite the battlefield in fire and steel. And now, nearly a century later, the legend remains. The Tiger One, the most feared tank of World War II, never truly left. It just moved from the battlefield into history.